Easiest for me, actually, if we can just go down the row, if you guys can introduce yourselves, tell us who you're with, and tell us a little bit about your company/organization.
So I was told to keep this mic on my chin. I'm going to try to do that. Apologies if I get quiet. My name is Nathaniel. I work with Quirky. I'm community director. Quirky is an invention community. So people submit their ideas to us. Our community helps us choose the best ideas. And then our community actually helps us turn those ideas into physical products. And once those start selling, we share 10% of the gross sales revenue generated by these products with every single person that helps us to turn that idea into a physical product. So very much about collaborating with the online community to find innovative solutions to real problems.
And a really cool office space too. I think I was at a party at your office not too long ago.
I do enjoy working there. It's quite nice.
Can you point out one or two things that's been produced out of the company in the past year that really sort of jump out at you?
Sure. So two major events that I think really come to mind for people when they're thinking about Quirky. We partnered with General Electric in 2013 to do two things that are pretty cool. To develop a new line of products in the connected home. So these are smart app-enabled devices. And also to unleash 300 of GE's patents to our community so that our community could invent off of those patents and turn what were originally industrial innovations into consumer innovations and products. And then in July, as a culmination of the connected devices piece of the partnership, we launched a new company called Wink. And Wink produces a online platform that connects all of your various smart devices into a single interface. So if you have light bulbs from Philips and a thermostat from Nest and a garage door opener from Honeywell, you can control all of these devices from a single application using Wink. That's been pretty awesome.
Convergence is very, very important these days. Robert?
Yeah, I'm Robert Cicetti. I work with iMakr. It's the world's largest retailer of 3D printers. We opened a location 1.5 years ago in London, and that is the world's largest retail store. And it went so well, we came to New York in June. And since then, we've kind of won hearts and minds in a way that we couldn't have imagined. You know, we kind of are leading a fervor of 3D printing as sort of the tech evangelist. Every day, people come in, they haven't seen a 3D printer running, and we are the first to show them. So that's really where we are, kind of making the technology accessible for the first time for people in New York City in a physical way.
And you have a rental program as well, right?
A rental program?
Yeah. I'd read something about that online. Is that not right?
No, I'm not sure.
Okay, look into it.
Maybe you should have a
absolutely.
program.
Bringing ideas together.
We do print on demand. We sell printers, anything and everything 3D printing. I think renting the machines, not sure.
What is, if you're allowed to say, what is the most popular model you guys have?
It's been a battle between two beasts. For the most part, we have flown the flag of New York's MakerBot high, but Ultimaker 2, a European model, just swam ashore from Europe, and they are battling out at a certain price range around, just below $3,000. But in other price ranges, we are happy to support other print makers as well. I think that saying what is one best printer is kind of difficult to answer because there's a good and a better and a best printer for everyone. It depends on what angle you're coming at 3D printing from.
Fair enough.
Hi, I'm Natalia Krasnodebska. I'm the community manager at Shapeways, and we're a 3D printing service and marketplace. So if you don't have a desktop printer, you can actually use the service. So what we do is we have a factory here in Queens in Long Island City, and represent. We also have one in Europe, And we have the best industrial machines that are available. So we have laser sintering machines, we have full color 3D printers, we do metals and ceramics as well. So anything that you can imagine, we can make it. So a lot of people actually do, a lot of the maker community actually, they'll either have a MakerBot or a desktop printer at home where they will tinker around and prototype things, and then when they're ready to sell it in a consumer-ready product, they'll bring it to Shapeways. So it's the same file format, you just upload it, select your material, we'll 3D print it and ship it to you. And sort of our way of supporting the maker community is giving them access to those machines. The machines we have in our factory range from like $50,000 to $1 million. So that isn't something that's accessible for everyone, and our mission for the last 6 years has been to bring that technology to anyone who wants it. So we only really charge you for how much material you use.
I know you guys have some consumer products as well. You're wearing some earrings right now. I think there are different ceramics and mugs that you can have printed up as well.
Yeah. These earrings actually I designed because I'm a maker too. And I 3D printed them with Shapeways. And what's cool about it is they're interlocking and moving parts, which you can only do with like selective laser sintering.
Do you find that most of the orders are coming in from people prototyping or from people actually just buying cool original stuff?
That's a great question. It's actually a pretty even split. The people that create the products are makers. So there's a lot of makers will buy their own products over and over again, like getting them ready. Like, for instance, we just had the iPhone 6 launch, and so we launched an iPhone 6 case contest. So we had, I think, about 70 different designs uploaded. And people will print them over and over to make sure it fits, to make sure it's the functionality is there, to make sure it feels nice in your hand. And the good thing about that is it's fairly cheap to prototype. And then there is a whole slew of people who are coming to our site and using it purely as a marketplace. They're finding things that they love. They're finding objects they can customize.
So it's sort of like an Etsy situation. You can make something on there and put it up for sale.
Yeah, a designer can. If I made an iPhone case and I wanted to make it for sale, I would upload it and I'd see, okay, cool, it costs $20 to print. I bet people would pay $40 for this. So I'd put it up for sale at $40. If you bought it, Shapeways would 3D print it, ship it to you, and then pay me my $20. So as a designer, we have actually 20,000 independent business owners we call them shop owners, on our site, and they're all making money selling their products. Yeah.
Matt?
You got it. Thanks.
Yes.
All right.
Tell me what you do.
Sure. So first of all, just wanted to thank Get Geeked and Barry for having the city here. My name is Matt Weinberg. Thanks, Barry. Get Geeked. My name is Matt. I'm with the New York City Economic Development Corporation. We are the city agency charged with growing New York's economy, and that includes supporting new manufacturing. That includes supporting the maker community. That includes supporting the Internet of Things. And particularly, I sit on a tech desk, and I oversee a lot of the city's marquee tech initiatives.
Cool. So this is actually a good place to start since we ended with you, since we're here in New York City, since according to my write-up behind me, this is kind of a New York City themed panel. I want to start with you and open it up to everybody else. How friendly of a city is New York for makers? I know this is, kind of notoriously a difficult place to live if you're an artist, a musician trying to make ends meet. Oftentimes, these people who are just starting out potentially have a tough time, making rent, things like that. So in what ways are you making New York a little bit more friendly for hardware startups?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the perspective of my esteemed panelists here, I'm very interested to hear, because we are out there creating and crafting these initiatives and implementing them, and to really see, how they're affecting the community is something that I'm very interested in discussing. But there's really two sides to that coin. First is, how do you really define maker? How do you define new manufacturing? The city definitely understands that we're witnessing a change in manufacturing. We've seen decline in jobs and in output since 2000 to 2012. I think half is the traditional manufacturing jobs have gone away. But we are seeing an uptick in certain niche industries. And since 2012, that's definitely a trend we're seeing. So the city, aware of that, is creating a lot of different incentives to help the maker community. One is more on a macro level. We have industrial business zones that are special geographic locations around the city where factories and manufacturers can come and set up shop, and we give them incentives and tax write-offs to make the economic climate more hospitable, more suitable. And second is more of a micro level help. We have different programs that really focus directly on the makers and directly on specific industries. We have a food manufacturing initiative. So if you're a food maker in New York, we provide an incentive and a tax program for that. We have a program called Next Top Maker, which awards a year-long mentorship and fellowship program for 6 of the city's leading new makers. So it ranges, again, it could even be someone in the food industry. It could be a furniture maker. It could be someone more directly connected to technology like the Internet of Things or 3D printing. We have other initiatives that range from fashion, from all these different industries in New York that we are very aware are contributing to the economy in a less traditional sense. We're there to support. So we have 2 approaches, and we hope that it's working, because New York, as we know, is a competitive city in so many different industries that I think it makes this city special.
Do you guys have any tie at all to the maker spaces? I mean, there aren't a ton here in New York City right now, but Resistor is a good example. These places where people can actually start out, can use tools, can actually prototype these things before they get to that manufacturing stage.
Yeah, there's actually a fashion incubator. So in 2007, 2008, when the financial crisis occurred, the city thought that we should invest more in industries that weren't financial. In doing so, we established a network of incubators, and we offered a lot of subsidies and tax credit to office spaces and real estate folks that set up incubators. So we have one in Staten Island called the Staten Island Makerspace. It's a typical, Internet of Things, typical maker shop. We have a couple others that aren't as traditional, but they revolve around food, they revolve around fashion. So yes, we are involved in maker spaces, but I agree that there's definitely a need for that space here.
So if you guys can tell me, what specifically brought your company to the city? I mean, I know it's going to be very different case by case, and in your guys' cases, you exist elsewhere in the world. I think Quirky's headquarters are in New York City right now.
Yeah, they are headquartered in New York City. Our founders from Long Island, so there's a bit of a familial connection to New York City. Also, just reflecting upon New York as a maker city, I feel like New York has this long history of being this bohemian place where art is thriving. There are a myriad of industries that all support each other. A lot of the reason why Quirky came to New York is it's the center for media, right? Center for advertising. It's a great finance hub, but there's also a really robust and really starting to thrive maker movement here as well. A lot of people who are very, very interested in making real things and building tools that help people to make real things. So we started around the same time that Repeatus was creating MakerBot, right, and NYC Resistor was being started, and that was kind of like the start of the hardware movement within New York City, and it just made sense, right? I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area originally. There's a very strong maker movement there, but I'm much more impressed with the way that the maker movement is being handled and the way that it's growing in New York City, because I just feel like people are hungrier, they're more interested in producing really game-changing ideas.
Maybe a little more desperate to make ends meet.
Maybe. I mean, look, San Francisco is also a ludicrously expensive city, right? You're not going to be able to live there unless you're making a good amount of money. So I think that your income is less of an incentive. I just think that there is this creative energy. There's a get shit done attitude in New York City that really complements the maker movement, and is really something that Quirky feeds on, and I think all of us here really feed on, and it's really what's so special about this city. I think it's what really sets us apart from other cities, from other similar movements.
And there is something, I think you touch on this a little bit, that we have here. We have so many different industries that intersect in a lot of really interesting ways. I think Shapeways is probably a pretty good example of that, of sort of the crossover. I mean, as you said, fashion is out here, and there's a really interesting cross-section happening between 3D printing, fashion, all these other industries. Food production. People are 3D printing food right now. People are doing all this prototyping right now. So it's a pretty good hotbed for that cross-section creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that Matt touched upon too, the maker spaces here. One of my friends runs Hack Manhattan, and that's sort of the main thing that he sees is people just want access to printers, they want access to tools, they want access to other people. And I think the greatest thing about New York is that you do actually have that cross currents. You have so many people passing through, so many different industries are here. And like at a party you meet, oh, this is just some guy that made Vimeo, and then like, oh, cool, like, oh, you do fashion? Cool. I know a gallerist, and suddenly you have this collaboration happening that I've lived in a few cities around the world, and I don't think I've ever lived in a place where those chance opportunities happen just every week. Like if you go out there, you're meeting really interesting people, and I think people like like what Matt's doing is providing opportunities where then they can actually make those ideas happen. And Quirky as well, like, oh, you have an idea, here's a platform for actually launching that. So I think actually one of the greatest symbols that the maker movement is alive and well here is that MakerFaire, who started in the Bay Area, has been like having a massive marquee event in New York for the last 3, 4, 5 years now.
Yeah, I think it's about 3 or 4, but
yeah,
it's the biggest event. The biggest MakerFaire is in New York, like
in
that says
Queens.
something.
yeah,
Another
it's
shout
in
out for
Queens.
Queens.
Yeah,
Says
this
something.
year it had 85,000 people over 2 days, which is crazy. It's not easy to get out there, and the 7 train wasn't running, and 85,000 people still came. So, yeah.
So Robert, I've got to imagine that foot traffic is probably huge for you guys. I mean, I think the service that you're really offering is, people are seeing 3D printers all over the place. They're seeing them on the internet. They're seeing these, super hyped up videos. But it's completely different to actually go and see something in person.
For sure. Living in Brooklyn, it's not always impressed upon me that I live at the crossroads of civilization. But working at the iMakr store every single day, I meet someone from an international locale who's in there for, a week. And they want to work with us for the week that they're here to do something they could not have done elsewhere. And you have people who have never seen a 3D printer before in their entire lives. You see this glazed over look every day where they haven't seen it in motion in a physical way. They've seen the videos, like you said, but to kind of make that connection in people's minds, it's more necessary than we can really anticipate, because obviously our culture is so on the screen, but something like 3D printing takes everything off the screen. So in kind of fulfilling the objective of that technology, it's great to have a storefront where anyone and everyone can come in, see the printers for the first time, and sort of see, how am I going to make use of that? Because I think having a makerspace is one thing, but we're making connections with people who might not even know what a makerspace is. So I think we're actually into the maybe second or third phase of the maker movement. Now that this technology is even more accessible than to a technician or engineer or someone who's already a hobbyist, tinkerer, it's way beyond that. Now we have people who are hairstylists from Mumbai coming in and telling me, I have an idea for a comb. Can you help me design this and help me print this? How can I get it done? I don't really want to deal with the technology. I don't know how it works, but you can help me, and let's do it. So as much as I think of the makerspace and the whole movement behind the maker mentality is about empowerment of the individual to use the tools, it's how are we now using these tools to make things that weren't made before. So I think in New York, those connections, like was mentioned, that those connections are being made quicker and from greater distances than we could find anywhere else.
This brings up a really good point that I wanted to touch on. I mean, obviously we live in a little technology bubble. We see all of these tools out there. Quirky is a good example. Crowdfunding sites, Kickstarter, Indiegogo are good examples of things that give people the power. We're seeing an explosion of microcontrollers, 3D printers, things for rapid prototyping, all these different elements. But I do sometimes want to step back and ask whether, the tools are there. Obviously, everybody has some vested interest in technology right now. Everybody's got a smartphone on them. But are we really legitimately seeing a movement? Are we really seeing lay people not only interested in the technology, but so interested that they want to, set up workshops in their home and really actually start building things?
So Quirky's whole mission is to make invention accessible, right? And so the way in which we do this is we believe in teaching invention education, teaching people how to become inventors, but also providing a platform through which someone can turn their idea into something real. And what I've been witnessing working with the Quirky community is that people are becoming so excited about this idea of being able to turn their ideas into something real that they're learning all these new skills, just like what you were saying, right? They're learning all these new skills that facilitate that process. So today, I was having a conversation with one of our community members who was interested in creating a product that would allow him to interact with the Wink app, right, to control light bulbs using gestures, right? So he wanted to create a product that would be gesture and voice controlled. And he was reaching out to me and he was saying, like, you know, I know that this is possible intuitively, but I'm not really sure, you know, what this would all involve. And I said, well, maybe consider using the Wink API. Maybe create a prototype using the Wink API. The guy had no idea what an API was. 2 days later, so I was having this conversation like last week, right? 2 days later, he comes back to me and he had bought a bunch of books on like what APIs are, on like how to program using Ruby, and he was like writing his own scripts and like hacking hardware together and like using these APIs. Like obviously this guy had the capacity to learn this, but this was a concept that was completely foreign to him. And through a casual conversation with me about the product that he was really enthusiastic about, he got the motivation to teach himself these new skills and to actually like start to utilize them for his prototypes. I think that it's so unusual and it's so unprecedented. I think we live in a very interesting age where we're providing these great tools that not only empower people, but it help them realize how empowered they actually are, so that they will go out on their own and learn these new skills and learn how to use these tools to produce real things.
And I think those are good examples, but I'd challenge my panelists here, though. I'm not sure if it really hit on your question. I mean, your guy that wants to make that app and your hairstylist from Dubai, I mean, they're all part of a certain certain constituency, a certain audience that has access to this sort of technology, right? And, you know, a big tenet of de Blasio's administration is that we want to make sure this technology really gets to those that are underconnected and those that are unserved. So, you know, I want to question you guys, what sort of charity initiatives or what sort of philanthropic, you know, initiatives do you undertake? I would love to see an iMakr 3D printing lab in elementary schools in Brooklyn and in Queens and in the Bronx. I'd love to see Quirky do a competition for children where the best idea gets made into some sort of prototype so they can actually see and get excited about technology. I mean, it's something that we definitely struggle with policy. It's not, you know, easier said than done, but it's something we should all be aware of, everybody on this panel and in this room.
Something that we did with Shapeways just recently is we partnered with Google's initiative called Made with Code, which was an initiative to teach girls, basically almost like middle school girls, how to code. And one of the ways that manifested was they used a software called Blocky, which is very simple coding of drag and drop. It's really about just getting interested in the idea of coding as a pursuit as much as marketing or hairstyling or oh wow, I'm being very gender stereotypical right now. But the idea was if we can get girls interested in this at a younger age, they're more likely to go into like the computer sciences and get those jobs. And so the way that we did this at Shapeways is there was a bracelet and you could code your own bracelet. So you could code it to say any message that you wanted, whether that was your name or BFF or I love to code. And we 3D printed 250,000 of those over the last 3 months. So that's one of the ways that we're doing that. And I think to speak to your earlier question, I think the seduction of 3D printing is really that people want to be involved in the products that they buy. Like who has a case on their smartphone out there? I have one. And you all picked a different case. One, probably to protect your very expensive phone. And two, because we all have the same phones, and the only way that you can express your identity and your individuality is to put add-ons onto that. So we've been doing this forever. Whoever has a laptop will put stickers on it. You know, this is my laptop. It has my stickers and my interests. You would do a custom paint job for your car. I think the maker movement has sprung out of that idea that, hey, we don't have to just buy what's out there. We can customize things so that they're us. Like the hairdresser wants to make the unique comb. Like she's seeing a need. Like this is my thing that I want to do. And suddenly there are all these technologies that enable that. So a lot of what we're actually trying to do at Shapeways is, you know, just providing people access to these tools, but also bringing people together. Something we don't do is help people design. So we have like a directory of designers. So if you are a 3D modeler, you can list yourself on our directory for free, and then we'll connect you with people who want to do cool ideas. So some of the more like high-profile ways that has happened has been the Dita Von Teese dress. That was Francis Batanti and Michael Schmidt, just two guys. And they wanted to make this amazing gown, and we connected them and printed it, but that has launched Francis's career. He has his own design studio, he lectures all around the world, and just the ability, I think that's something that we can really capitalize on as companies, is use our resources and presence to help individuals do more that they could have on their own.
And we're definitely at a critical stage right now, and I know this is one of Bloomberg's really big initiatives as he was on his way out, was really bringing coding into public schooling. So I believe that's carried on to de Blasio's administration as well.
Definitely.
Really, so we've got the interest, we've got the technology out there. How do we actually make that a part of the STEM learning program?
That's a question. I mean, that's a challenging question, a good one. I'm not an expert in education policy, but I think making these technologies ubiquitous across elementary schools as early as possible, getting programs established in underserved schools. I mean, that's the key, right? And we have a few programs. One's called GenTech. It's a high school coding program. It's much like the NYC Big Apps competition, if you guys are familiar. It's a citywide civic innovation competition. GenTech is sort of like that for underserved high schoolers or low-income high school students. So I think replicating those programs across the board is great, but I think there's many challenges. The city, we can't do it alone. We are not the prime innovator. In fact, by nature, government is slow. It's a bureaucracy. So we need the help of really creative and smart people from Shapeways, from Quirky. So I think it's a challenge that we need to collectively address.
Sure. So Robert, do you guys have any initiatives to bridge that gap? I mean, the interest is there. The people are walking in. They see the technology. How do they make the next step before spending $3,000?
Right. So we're currently working with an initiative called CC3DP. It's a creative challenge for the 3D printing. We're going to train and get people out there in the 5 boroughs teaching kids how to 3D print, I believe from 3rd to 8th grade. Those, age groups where people, especially young kids, who are so malleable and ready to get with technology that doesn't seem so foreign to them. They're all on top of new technology. And just because they're maybe going to an underserved school or they don't have access to a 3D printer at home and wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise, doesn't mean that they shouldn't already be able to think in 3D, work in this new dimension that every industry is going to need in the near future. So it's almost a form of kind of engendering literacy for 3D modeling, 3D printing. If kids don't know how to code, for instance, that's one thing, but to not learn how to work in a physical way with 3D printing is going to leave them underserved. So we hope that iMakr, having a physical store, of course, will lead them there, but we want to branch out with the CC3DP to kind of go out, learn how to engage with young people, train older people who understand this technology. And it is sort of a challenge, especially because it's such a new technology that isn't as well understood. It's a challenge to develop a curriculum about progress in advancing this knowledge. It's not just such a novelty that can have one event and nothing comes of it. I think that people have a sense of 3D printing that is still kind of in fantasy land, so it's kind of making it a reality that's sustained for all kids.
Nathaniel, I mean, in a major way, it's kind of your job to do a lot of the heavy lifting for people. So they'll come up with the ideas, and you've got a lot of the smart people to help actually turn that into a real product.
Well, I don't think you're doing the Quirky community or anyone else out there with an idea justice if we're not calling them smart as well, right? They just don't have access to the same resources that Quirky staff do, and so we're kind of filling that gap. But anyway, continue your question.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if you guys are doing anything to help bridge the technological gap for these people that are, coming up with really clever ideas but don't really know how to execute them.
I mean, that's what the whole Quirky model is all about, right? It's providing this platform for you to just have that kernel of an idea, right, and be able to turn that into a product. But we very much believe that making invention accessible is not just about making the product, but also about showing people how to be more inventive. So we, on a regular basis, are producing educational content that is focused on not only, how do you craft a great idea submission, but also what is 3D printing? How do you use a 3D printer? What does this mean for your invention process? We're actively partnering or pursuing partnerships with companies like Shapeways and 3D Hubs to figure out ways to give our community members access to 3D printers. We launched the School of Invention program recently, which is it's a program to invite students in New York at the moment into Quirky. We walk them through the process of invention. We give them a tutorial on 3D printing and what that means for invention, and really kind of show them the potential for turning their ideas into real products. And we're working on turning this into actually a full-blown curriculum that can be applied to any classroom, regardless of where it's located, regardless of whether or not they have a maker space, regardless of whether or not they have design education, but that any teacher anywhere can implement an invention education and teach their students the fundamentals of mathematics and how that applies to product development.
I'm sad to say I think we went pretty well over time. I feel like we just barely scratched the surface, but wanted to thank everybody so much for coming on the panel and speaking with us.
Thank you.
I think there's still a little time to get out there and actually go ask you guys questions in person. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do that right now. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.